What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I am an herbalist and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. Thank you, as always. Thank y'all for being here. I super appreciate it. I love having this kind of community around. Love having folks who are listening to what I'm talking about and checking in on me when I'm not showing up. I appreciate y'all. If you want to send me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, super helpful. If you want to join the Patreon, that is super helpful. If you want to go on Spotify, Pandora, Tidal, check out Can't Help Myself. That is all super helpful. Thank you for being here, and look forward this week to some new content coming out. I have a new podcast dropping this week. If you didn't check it out, last week I released an old talk that I did, and that set us up for what we got going on this week. So thank you for being engaged in this community, and let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So today we have, or really this week we have, this is the end of Leo season. This is the last week of Leo. And so last week we somehow survived the full moon in Aquarius. Whoa, that was a lot. It was conflict and tension all day and night. And it was, so Saturn in Aquarius, opposite stuff in Leo, right? That's been a primary vector of difficulty, and whenever we've got an opposition from Saturn, it's like there's heavy weight that just wants to weigh down on your shit, right? And we're not done with oppositions to Saturn. We've got one more to go. Venus has moved into Leo now. And so now that Venus is in Leo, then we're going to see Venus opposing that Saturn, as well as squaring the stuff in Taurus. We can recall that the North Node is in Taurus there with Uranus. Uranus and the North Node are just hanging out together. So Uranus on the North Node wants to turn up whatever it does. We can remember that the North Node is associated with the head of the dragon, right? And so if the head and the tail of the dragon have been severed, then the head doesn't ever know that it gets full, right? All it does is just chomp, 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 just more, whatever it does. It's doing that to Uranus, and so it's going to turn up more. It's going to get a little greedy with whatever Uranus does. Uranus is the chaos liberator, right? Uranus is the one who flips the table and who isn't going to have any of this standard bullshit, because this standard bullshit is keeping me down, and you're not going to hold me down. You don't hold the great ones down, right? So that's how Uranus in Taurus is feeling. So as Venus moves through Leo, then we're going to see Venus squaring that stuff in Taurus, as well as opposing Saturn in Aquarius. So that we've got one more of those to go, and Venus is sort of gearing up toward that this week, but we're not actually going to see those oppositions happening until or those aspects happening until next week and the week after. So we're not quite done with this yet, but the sun is at the very end of Leo at this point. I think we get the opposition to Saturn early in the week, and then it's just kind of waning after that. The sun is actually approaching a square to Mars, but will not hit that square with Mars until we get into Virgo and Gemini. Mars is going to move into Gemini at the very end of this week. We'll talk about that next week. And then after that happens, then the sun is going to move into Virgo, and then we'll see that square. So we are seeing the same sort of conflict and tension that has been described by these fixed sign placements for a while. We're seeing that stuff. We've seen the peak of it. The peak was the full moon, right? That's what full moons are. Oftentimes, it's the peak of the cycle. It's the brightest moon. It's going to shine the brightest on the thing or whatever, right? And so we had that last week, and then now we're still in this game, but we're going to come out on the other side of it and start to think with some new and different things, especially since we can see that Venus is now tangling with this in such an important way. Venus is on axis. Venus in Cancer before had been off axis to that Saturn, and so was sort of able to just skate by it a little bit. Whereas now Venus in Leo is going to have to really engage with this. Now this is especially important because Venus rules Taurus, right? And so whenever we see the stuff in Taurus in conflict with the stuff in Aquarius, then that shows us that whatever Venus is going through is going to be important. So then we see that Venus herself is in Leo and also in conflict with that stuff in Aquarius. That's going to be a lot of conflict for Saturn to have to deal with. Saturn being our ordering principle, Saturn being the authority and the management, the older folks, whoever is telling you what the rules are. Right? If there's anyone who's like, no, this is the rule and we follow this rule now, then that person is going to be your Saturn, right? That figure is going to have a lot on the plate right now. There's been it's like when you're the manager and there's just one fire after another that you have to put out. It's just like, it's all going all at the one time and you still got people coming in the door and it's all still, this is how Saturn feels about it right now, right? And this is one of the things that we're going to see. Saturn is in dignity in Aquarius, is super strong, able to do the Saturn things Saturnly in this space. But as Saturn moves, we're at the end of Saturn in Aquarius, right? As Saturn moves into Pisces in March of next year, then we're going to see Saturn like not in the kind of dignity that Saturn is in now, is going to start to like lose grip on things. We're not at the lose grip spot right now, but we're at the point where it's like we can start to see why someone who's been holding so tightly might start to lose grip in a little bit, right? There's all of this chaos and all of this stuff that needs to be managed. We're going to see that stuff starting to look a little overwhelming on that Saturn. This is, I think that this is especially interesting. Like it's one thing after another with this Saturn, because also Venus in Leo is going to get this nice trine from Jupiter in Aries this week, right? And so this Jupiter in Aries, Jupiter has, if we can look back a couple of years ago, Jupiter was in Aquarius. For that period of time, Jupiter was just saying yes to Saturn the whole time. Saturn still was thinking that Saturn was going to do all the Saturn things for all time at that point, right? I'm super strong and gonna just organize, and if we just manage everything stronger, then we'll make the utopian world that like Aquarius sort of like has these like pie in the sky idealist sort of visions of things, right? Saturn in Aquarius was like, no, we're going to make that happen, and we're going to do that via management. We're going to do that via organizational efficiency. And Jupiter was like, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. That's Jupiter in Aquarius. Jupiter in Aries now is making a little sextile to Saturn, which is like fine or whatever, but Saturn's not really getting a lot of help from that Jupiter at this point. And in fact, Jupiter is going to, via trine to Venus and Leo, Jupiter is going to then empower that which is opposing or in conflict with Saturn, right? Because Jupiter is going to say big up to that Venus. That, Venus in Leo is like very excited about self. Like we can think about attraction or harmony or beauty or any of this sort of stuff when it comes to Venus. Put Venus in Leo and it's like, I am attracted to me. Like it's like when you walk by the mirror and be like, oh, she fine over there, right? That is that kind of situation, right? So Venus in Leo is very excited about what I can do, my own capacity to do stuff. And then Jupiter in Aries is going to say yes to that. Jupiter is going to want to inspire that, say, like bring that up, expand that kind of thing. That's what Jupiter does, right? Jupiter brings joy, luck, and abundance. So even though Venus doesn't look super comfortable in this T-square with Taurus and Aquarius and all this, there is a sense of inspiration that can come around it. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it can be fun to surmount obstacles, right? Once you make it to the top, then you're like, yo, I fucking did that shit. Like I want to do it again because it feels so good to have been up here and to use your muscles and all that sort of stuff to like try to do difficult things. When you do them, then and you're not doing that difficult thing anymore, then it feels really good. Jupiter looks like it wants to sort of empower that with the Venus this week, but because that's empowering Venus, and Venus is ruling that Taurus stuff, and Venus is in opposition to Saturn, then this looks like a really difficult week for Saturn. So if it's your job to organize things or to, bring, especially with that Mercury and Virgo getting a little close to that opposition with Neptune, it looks like things like kind of want to get out of hand here a little bit. So, but again, if it's getting out of hand, then can you find the joy in that? Can it be fun? Can it be inspiring? Can you show what a fucking badass you are for getting through all of that? Speaking of getting through all of that, I'm out of time again. Thank you so much for being here. I super appreciate all y'all. If you want to send me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, it's super, super helpful. Be sure to check out What is the Time with Zamboni Funk. Got a new thing dropping this week. Check y'all later. Bye.